Welcome back to another episode of Baseball Books and Banter with your girl Nicole. Still not sponsored by a Diet Coke, but still drinking it in my Dunkin' cup. I had an iced tea lemonade from Dunk's, so please don't ever get rid of it. It's my favorite. And then I refill it with Diet Coke afterwards because it's in the afternoon. I need to re-up it. Today's guest is Dennis Gaub, and I probably could have talked to him for like 4 hours because he's a great storyteller. B, he has so many good old school baseball stories about players. And I didn't know that Montana was such a hotbed for baseball people. So I don't know if I have to move out there to find a baseball boyfriend, but like if you're out there, like come find me. So it was really great. So we'll get into that. But first, things I'm obsessed with. First things first, I'm obsessed with my sweater. I love candy canes. I don't eat them as much as I used to because they're hard on the teeth. But I got this sweater at Marshall's and it's for big girls and it was very exciting. So shout out to Marshall's and my new candy cane sweater. The earrings, I think I got from a fast fashion website that I won't name because that's no fun. Also, my really cute, my barrette, and I'm so bad at doing the back birth. It has little candy canes on it. I picked it up at the Cozy Cottage 2 days ago. It's from a company called Sunny's. It was at the Cozy Cottage in Pembroke. So shout out to the Cozy Cottage. They have 3 stores. You can go everywhere and find them. I'm at the Pembroke store, but you can also find them in Hyannis and Plymouth. So that's my barrette. Super cute. I wore it yesterday to a sip and stroll at the Kingston Mall with good friends Denise Latham and Bill Goyette, also authors. Denise writes Small Town Romance set in Vermont, which yesterday I told her I'm going to try to write into my 4th book because they're in Vermont right now for a baseball game and I might reference the town. So we'll see what happens. Shout out to Denise. Bill writes thrillers. He's like the nicest guy, but writes the darkest books. So love that. We had a really good time. I sold a lot of books, but I've already spent all that money on Christmas stuff for myself because I'm of the treat yourself side of things. So I treated myself. So I got a new wallet and I got some Christmas gifts for my brother because I'm a nice person. So I'm obsessed with those. What else I'm obsessed with? I'm going to get my Christmas cards out this week, which is really exciting, except I forgot to change the year on my Christmas card. I used the same Christmas card as last year, but forgot to update it to 2025. So that's a bummer. So if you get a card from me, I'm sorry, it says 2024. The cats are still the same. The books are still the same. I'll talk about that more at the end of this podcast. But for now, it says 2024. These 2 years have been a long 2 years. Let's just put it that way. For those that are in the area and want to know more about Sisters in Crime, come to my house on the Cape. Shoot me an email. I'm going to have a mixer Sunday the 14th. It's kind of the last big book event of the year. And I also am trying to get more members. So come eat my sandwiches and I'll have the Bills Patriots game on. The Bills are losing right now to the Bengals. And if they lose, great, because that means the Patriots stay in first. And then we play them next week and maybe we can win again. We'll see what happens, but there's like 7 minutes left. Speaking of sports, the Patriots. I said this last time, like in my newsletter too. What? When did I wasn't expecting this. I love Mike Vrabel, but was I expecting them to have all these wins? No, because I like Gerard Mayo too. I think Gerard Mayo was set up to fail, and I feel bad. But just the videos after the game, the team seems to like each other. The team seems to be vibing. I'm a big Pop Douglas girly. He was, I think I've talked about, I don't know if I talked about it on the podcast, but he was in the booth during one of the Red Sox games this season, and he was just adorable watching the game, trying to talk football, but really more invested in the game. And I was like, I'm down with that kid. So they're great. The Celtics are still the Celtics. They just blew out the Wizards, which isn't hard. They also blew out the Lakers. Granted, LeBron wasn't playing and Luka wasn't playing, but Austin Reeves the night before had a 40 point game and he got nothing. So they're going to be playing now here at 4 o'clock, I believe. So hopefully I will be watching that. Tonight, there's not a lot of other sports. Army Navy is next week. Shout out to my dad and my brother and my aunt and their friends and family going. Um, Obviously, go Navy, beat Army. And what else did I do? Oh, the Bills just picked it off. Oh no, they're gonna win the game. Oh no, I don't like it. Um, Today I also went to the South Shore Plaza and donated Toys for Tots for Mix 1041's 10,000 toys for 10,000 girls and boys, something like that. And I got to meet Kennedy again. For those that know who have been following me for a while, I was on Kennedy's dodgeball team pre-pandemic. I almost died. One of the games that we played, I was the last person on the team still in the game. Didn't know I had skills like that. Also was terrified I was gonna lose it. We did not win the championship. Let's just put it that way. But it was fun. And I love Mix 1041 and Carson and Kennedy. So shout out to them. I gave her some books. And yeah, that's kind of all that's been going on. So I just got we got cut off in this interview because again, like I said, I could have talked to him for hours upon hours and it was kind of funny. Oh, that's funny. I was like, I don't know how you found me, but this is great. And he just emailed me and said, oh, my publisher gave me a list of podcasts and yours was on it. I was like, oh, that's exciting. And I think I actually, I just sent his publisher a Christmas card. So hi, Sunbury Press in Pennsylvania. But yeah, but enjoy Dennis. I'll put his links and stuff in it, but hopefully I can get him back soon to talk more baseball and maybe more Baltimore Orioles baseball, maybe some Montana baseball. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But enjoy. Also, how do I pronounce your last name?
Gaub.
Gob. Okay.
Gaub. It's a German name.
Okay.
My heritage, there's lots of people out on the Great Plains and Northern
Yeah.
Rockies who are not strict Germans. They're Germans from Russia. They
Oh, fascinating.
migrated from my my kin migrated from around the Black Sea, 110, and so years ago, on my mother and father's side. And then other Germans from Russia had settled. This is around the Volga River.
Okay.
Very, very briefly, they were all there from the late 1700s on. If you know your history, Catherine the Great,
Oh, yeah.
the Empress of Russia, was
Mhm.
German herself. And the frontier then was to the east for Russia. She wanted people to settle, so she offered some inducements
Yeah.
to convince her country folk to come there. And I have been able to find my ancestors going back, migrating from, I think, somewhere around in the Bavarian region of Germany
Wow.
around the early 1800s. They came out there. And for various reasons, they decided to migrate to the US, like lots of people
Mhm.
in the early 20th century. Long story short.
Well, it's sort of, I mean, a little bit like my heritage is French Canadian. So
Uh-huh.
we're if you go to Actonville, Quebec, you'll find a lot of Aslans there.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
where all my cousins are. There's a baseball stadium, Leo Aslan Stadium.
Oh,
Uh,
a
I
relative of
haven't been
yours?
there yet. It's only 6 hours away. I don't know why I don't go driving. Plus, I love all my Canadian cousins. Every time I see them at a funeral, I'm like, why don't we hang out more? But you know, what are you going to do? And it is only 6 hours, and I'm not sure why I never just go up there. But they have a small, like almost like an independent league baseball in Canada, where it's
Hmm.
these smaller teams that play the baseball, kind of similar to what Dave went through in the early years before everything.
Yeah.
We've already jumped into the conversation, but for those that are joining us, welcome to Baseball Books and Banter. Today's guest is Dennis Gaub, which is why we were talking at the beginning, because I wanted to make sure I said it right, because I can sometimes not have good pronunciation. And you just emailed me out of the blue and said, hey, I have a baseball book. Are you interested in reading it and maybe having me on? And I was like, oh, you wouldn't know this, but my family lives outside of Baltimore. My dad and his
Oh,
wife.
you're right.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, and I lived in DC for 6 years. They live in Bowie. So when I saw Baltimore Orioles, I was like, oh, that used to be when I lived in DC. We would call it Fenway South because we'd go to all the Red Sox games there because Baltimore was bad. And they weren't selling tickets, but every time
Mhm.
the Red Sox came, this was even pre World Series wins. Every time the Red Sox came, it would draw. So we would take that 45-minute drive from Virginia and go to the, and plus Camden Yards, beautiful, beautiful ballpark,
Yeah,
beautiful.
I've never been,
Oh,
I've been to Baltimore exactly once on a business training trip about 10 years ago, just before I retired from the corporate world. But I have not been in, do you know where Lutherville is? A suburb of Baltimore,
I don't
about
know. It
10,
doesn't sound.
15,000. That's where Dave McNally and his family lived for about 10 years. They bought a house um, that had previously been owned by Brooks Robinson.
Yep.
And a contact of mine at the Baltimore Sun, I asked him to swing by the house, and he
Yeah.
got me some video, and the house is still standing and it's in good repair.
Oh, that's
And
good
they
to
moved away 50 years ago this year, moved back to Billings.
Wow. So yeah, when you emailed me, I was like, that sounds fat. It's kind of funny. You won't know this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. After you emailed me, like 2 days later, I got another email from another person who's writing a book about
Mhm.
baseball. And I'm like, oh, I love this. I'm on like the baseball list. I love this. This is fantastic. But I'll let you kind of give a little introduction to who you are before we jump into the writing stuff. But go ahead and tell people a little bit about you and why you chose to write this book.
Okay, let's see.
Yeah,
I'm a Toastmaster. I'm in a Toastmasters club, so I'll try and keep this short, sweet, to the point. Um, Briefly, I grew up, I was a farmer's kid in eastern Montana, ended up graduating from high school here in Billings, but off got my journalism degree, was a reporter for 25 plus, reporter, newspaper editor for 25 plus years. Um, Stops in western Colorado, Grand Junction, northeast Wyoming, Gillette, Wyoming, Michigan. I was the editor of a weekly paper there, but the longest stint was here in Billings at the Billings Gazette, 20 plus years.
wow.
For various reasons, I got out of daily newspapering in the late 90s and found myself eventually in the tech world, specifically the software world. I worked for a couple companies. I'm not a coder. I worked in sales support roles. I can tell you exactly what my position is, but most people would go, "What the heck is that?"
That
I was a
sounds familiar.
proposal writer and proposal manager because I had enough tech savvy to understand that helping software companies sell their products to business, um, government agencies, and so on. And as I came to the end of that, um, my creative writing instincts came to the fore. I can tell you specifically how I got going, but this book, in the interest of time, had its genesis while I was writing my first book. A person who had some valuable information for me had, and I should add that he and I are about the same age. We're both 8.5, 9 years younger than Dave McNally. He had been, he was a product of the Catholic school system here in Billings. And while he was growing up, he had gotten acquainted with Dave McNally. Um, whether you know Dave, and I could never pin this down. He said it was Dave and his girlfriend,
Okay.
and I asked his widow whether she remembers that. She doesn't specifically remember that, so I kind of glazed over that.
Yeah.
Somehow he became acquainted with McNally. And of course, I knew who McNally was, but my friend Tim O'Malley, another Irish name,
Good Irish name.
um, he um, he said to me, "Dennis, you got to write a book about McNally someday." So, 4 books in the can, retired from the corporate world, and I finally wrote the McNally book. Sadly, Tim passed away last year. So, as I put in the afterword, if you're a spiritual person and you believe in the afterlife, uh, Tim is up there, checked out the book in the heavenly library, and he's
Mhm.
reading it, and enjoying it right now.
Can you
So,
imagine that library up there? They probably have everything. Just thinking
Yeah,
about it.
you think the Library of Congress is big.
Right. It's like the Library of Alexandria all over again, just up there.
Yeah, and
That'll
so
be when I get a chance to read all the books that I have back here. Is
yeah,
when I get up there. Fingers
yeah,
crossed.
I've got too many books
Yeah,
to read now. I'm always getting more and
same.
not finishing up the things that I had before. So that's long story short. Um, and
So you
I
were a
had,
sports
pardon me?
writer for some
Yes,
of that time,
I
right?
was a sports writer here in Billings, and I was also a sports writer down in Colorado. I was a sports writer in northeastern Wyoming. And when you're a weekly newspaper editor, as I was in a little town in Michigan called Frankenmuth, Michigan,
Oh,
you cover everything, including sports. So I left sports about 40 years ago
okay.
for various reasons, and then wandered into covering City Hall and crime and other things here in Billings, and uh, then left the daily newspaper uh, realm, and as I say, ended up in the tech world. But the creative writing was always underneath the surface.
So when
So
you went to Northwestern,
yes, I did.
and I have to say that slowly because as a Bostonian, I want to say Northeastern, and I'm like, no, no, it wasn't in Boston. It was the Chicago one.
The Chicago.
Um,
Yeah.
and you went for journalism?
Yeah, I went to journalism
Okay.
school. That's a whole separate story because when I was there, it was always, it was regularly the one of the half dozen most expensive schools in the country. I like to say I was there when, most of the student body, they were born with silver spoons in their
Yeah.
mouth. It was just shedding its reputation as the quote North Shore Country Club, if you know
Oh,
your way
wow.
around Chicago. Lots of rich kids go in there, and I was fortunate enough to get a um, full ride. My parents could never have
Sure.
afforded, even back then, to send me to a ritzy place like that. But I got a full ride tuition scholarship.
Wow.
That and loans and work study jobs got me through,
Lovely.
and it absolutely opened. It was for a kid from Montana. It was an eye-opening experience. I was there in the late 60s, early 70s
Wow.
when history was unfolding in front of me right after the Chicago Democratic Convention of
Yep.
68, the Chicago 7 conspiracy trial, all of that. I don't, I tell younger people, um, it wasn't history, it was
It was
right
life.
in front of me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was life happening.
it
And
was happening. Yeah.
now it's history, but you're like, no, no, like I was living through that. I mean, a little different kind of what I was in college when 9/11 happened. And it was
Mhm.
at the time you're living through it. You don't think of it going, oh my God, this is going to be, I'm going to study this 30 years from now. No, you're like, this is real life happening.
That's
And
right.
I can only imagine being in college with some of that stuff too, going, this is what's going to happen after this. You don't know. And that's kind of, I think, where the creative juices start coming in too, is seeing these things happening around you and going, well, what's going to happen after? And
Right.
I mean, you write more nonfiction, so I'm sure it's a little bit different because you have to um, stay relatively true to the stories. There has
Mhm.
to be some
It
truth
is
to it.
fact. It is fact based, and as I
Right,
explained in the beginning,
right.
um, one of the things I struggled with early on, and then came to terms with, is you're not looking back at really ancient history, but you're looking back to the early 50s, mid 50s, and you can do lots of research nowadays. You can go to newspaper archives and you can get quotes and stuff. Um, but there are instances, and you probably read them in the book, where um, I had bits and pieces of what happened, and then I had to construct some dialogue. And I tried to be very careful to say, if you see it within quotes,
It's a quote.
I can document it. Somebody captured that. But if it's out of quotes,
Yep.
that's what I imagine the conversation would be. For example, do a little bit of name dropping, uh, um, Dave McNally's first day as a little leaguer, about as near as I could tell, about 1951, when he walked his mother was a single mother.
Yep.
She had lost her husband in the waning days, in the final months of World War II over in the Pacific Theater in Okinawa. He was killed. And fortunately, she had a college education, so she had a professional level job. Dave was the youngest, was the baby of the family of four kids. His dad went off to the Navy, um, and when he was maybe one or two, so he
Oh,
never really knew his dad. But anyway, he walks up the street to a legendary Little League field, perhaps the first Little League field in Montana. And who should he bump into but a man named Cease Musburger? Cease Musburger was the father of Brent Musburger.
I read that and I was like, whoa, like it blew my mind because I
Yeah,
don't know a lot
and
about him. Like I know
Brent's a
he's an
little older.
announcer, but
Yeah, and so I was at a function here in Billings. I lived elsewhere in the state at the time, about 10 years ago, where they were dedicating a Little League field
right.
elsewhere in town in honor of Cease Musburger, who was a very prominent businessman here. And Brent Musburger, who I knew casually, showed up in honor of his dad, and he started telling the story that you've probably read about how this kid couple years younger than him shows up and basically offers to rake the field. And Brent freely confessed that
He was
uh, work like that was not really his stuff.
yeah.
So then I imagined, um, so then I put in
And you
some
but the
imaginary
yeah,
dialogue where Mr. Musburger
and
may have said,
you
yeah,
reference that. You say, Brent said this, but this is how I imagine the conversation would have
yeah,
gone. Like a
yeah, Brent
parent will,
said this. I heard him say that, and
yeah,
I can verify that. But the
right,
rest of the stuff, nobody knows now.
right.
So,
I will admit it took me a minute, like when I read the first conversation that wasn't a conversation, to go like, oh, this is the narrative part of the
mhm.
story. And I'm not familiar with that. So I was like, okay, but now that I've read it a few times, I'm like, oh, I get it. Yeah. Because you don't want to lie. You don't want to be like, here's the conversation that happened because it may or may not have. It could have happened, but you also don't want to be that person and then somebody come back and be like, I don't think he ever said that. What I also found really interesting is there's a lot in this book about well, I've only gotten 10% through. I'm it's on Kindle Unlimited, everybody, so give them all the page views that you can. But I we as baseball fans know about free agency. We know, especially younger fans, it's always been part of our lives. So we're kind of like, oh, it was always like this. But
Mhm.
I didn't know that it stemmed from this pitcher this time in 1975, was it? 72, 75?
December 23rd, 1975 is when the ruling, we're going on the 50th anniversary of this famous
Basically,
ruling.
before it was essentially the owners owned you, literally. Like you couldn't,
Mhm.
like now, as a Red Sox fan, we know all the, Bregman's like, maybe I'm not going to play for you guys next year and stuff like that. That wasn't the case prior to this ruling. And I didn't know. And it surprised me that this is the first biography of the person who spearheaded that.
Yes, and to be fair, two points I want to make, Nicole. First of all, um, I was remiss. I thought I had something in the book, but somehow it fell through the cracks to give credit to somebody else who old time, real serious fans would know about Kurt Flood for the
Mm,
Cardinal, who tried to battle single-handedly um, against the reserve clause. He took his case all the way to the Supreme Court. He lost, and that was a very unhappy story.
yeah.
And there is one other person, um, read more about it later on in the book, Andy Messersmith, who was with the
Mm,
Dodgers at the time. This is where it gets really kind of weird without giving away the whole story. Um, Andy Messersmith was it was an labor arbitration case, and arbitration had crept into baseball a few years before that. Excuse me. And uh, Messersmith, I believe, was playing without, if I remember right, was playing without a contract for the Dodgers that year. Dave, meanwhile, in the summer of 1975, going and tie into some of your Canadian connections, he'd been up in Montreal playing for the Expos, started out with 3 wins, then he had 6 losses, and he said, I'm taking money and I'm not earning it anymore. It's
Oh,
time to go back to Billings. And he and his brother had already made arrangements. That's a whole separate story about the
yeah.
Ford dealership that they took over. But so he wasn't there at the very beginning. But Marvin Miller, the head of the players union, was worried that, and I should let me back up. Dave was not officially retired. He always say I was on some kind of a weird list
Yeah.
with the Expos. I didn't know exactly what it was. So they
Just kept
could
having to come
brought him
back.
back if he had agreed to. So in the summer of 1975, he's back in Billings. Dave is, that is, and Marvin Miller is worried. You know your baseball. Walter O'Malley owned the Dodgers then. He was a very wealthy man, and the Dodgers were very well heeled. And Miller
Or
thought,
things change. There's
yeah,
still,
he thought he just
yeah.
they dangle a big pot of money in front of Messersmith, he'd sign, and the case would collapse. So he wanted Dave as his quote insurance guy. And Dave says,
Okay.
"Sure, I'll do it."
Yeah.
And so that's how it came to be. And one of the funny things was John McHale of the Expos. I think he was their general manager. He just shows up one day, mid to late summer in Billings, and finds Dave's name. Back when you could do that,
Yeah, right.
you could find it in the phone book or wherever, and calls
Kids
up Dave and
are
says, "Hey, Dave, I'm in town. You want to get together for coffee and we'll chat a little bit." So he's trying to convince Dave to come back
right.
and play baseball in '76, and Dave says, "Nope,
I'm
I'm
good.
staying here." His wife was pregnant by then with their fourth child,
Okay.
and he and his brother, this we'll do a little name dropping. They owned Archie Cochran Ford.
Okay.
They've been around since the 1940s with Cochrane, Cochrane. And this is one of the things I didn't really know till I was doing the book. Archie Cochran was the younger brother of a younger brother. I'm not sure how many kids there were in the family. I think they grew up in Massachusetts, of
Okay.
Mickey Cochran, the Tigers Hall of Fame player and later
Oh,
player
weird. Yeah.
catcher. Yeah, and Mickey, I don't know how much older than he was. Mickey had served in World War II a bit, and then he came out to both Wyoming, Cody, Wyoming, and near Billings, and liked the country to relax, fish, hunt, and so on.
Yeah.
And the story I've heard is that he loaned his brother Archie the money to buy an existing Ford dealership here
Okay.
in Billings. And the dealership is still known as Archie Cochran Ford to
Wow.
this day. They never changed it to McNally Motors, even though Dave and his
Oh,
brother Jim ran it for any number of years.
yeah.
Um, so Dave just said, "Hey, I got a young family. He loved to play golf. I'm going to play golf. I'm back in my hometown.
Yeah. I'm
Nope,
good.
not coming back."
More players should do that.
Mhm.
Retire. I think that's one of the problems with a lot of sports nowadays. Aaron Rodgers. Just retire. Like, go out on top. I mean, Tom Brady sort of did it in
Yeah,
Tampa.
yeah,
Like he won one more and then was like, I'm out. And David Ortiz was like, I won one more World Series. I'm gone. I'll see you later. But you always see you never want to see the people. You want to know your worth, and you also want to know I went out doing it when I still liked it and I
mhm.
didn't get frustrated with it. And it sounds like that was what Dave's thought was like, I'm literally at my limit. It's not fun for me. I want to stay home with my family. Full stop.
Yep, that's exactly what he did. And
And
he
also it must be nice to be able to do that. It would be nice
And
if we all just do
he
that.
was fortunate compared to some of the other players of his era that he had something he could step into, a
Yeah.
separate career that would support his family and be very satisfying. Later on in the book, there's a quote about the only time I directly interacted with him, he said this is like in 78, he said there are lots of, when free agency was just getting rolling and $1 million contract was huge money back then. But he said, there are something to the effect. I could find it. I've got my copy of the book right here, but I won't bog us down in that there are some people who get a big chunk of money and spend it all, and then they're destitute. But he wasn't saying that he was better than them, but
Oh, he had a plan.
he just was fortunate.
Yeah, and he had a plan. Like he
He
knew
had a
what his
plan.
plan was.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I that was another one of towards the beginning of the book about his mom, which I could read a biography about her. I mean, she was a athlete. She was, like you said, college educated, lost her husband young, raised these four kids. But one of my favorite quotes from her, and I might write this down and put it on like a post-it note on my computer. She always said, "Have a good time. You'll be working the rest of your life," when he was going for Little League. And I was like, you
Yeah.
don't think of that. Like I'm in college and I'm like, I got to have a job after this. And now looking back, I'm like, oh, that was the time we should have been living our best lives. And it's you look back on it, you're like, oh man, that's so true. And so if you want to write another biography, I would say go for her because she sounds fascinating. If you want to do, she's probably not as
Yeah,
quotable, but
I do wish I had met her. She
earlier.
outlived Dave Dave died of, he was a, he was a smoker, chain smoker most of his life. He tried to quit. He died of lung cancer,
Um, she
all
lived
too
to like
young at 60.
90 something, right?
2002, he died of lung cancer.
Yeah, but she
Yeah,
lived until she was 90
he
something.
lived until, she lived another 4 or 5 years after that.
Okay.
Yeah, she's in these parts, she's known as tough Butte, Montana stock. We call
I
it Butte, America.
I could believe that. I could believe that. So, because I bothered you so much at the beginning of the call about your name and got to hear your history, we're into our last 10 minutes. So, I want to make sure if you have book recommendations that you're able to share them. Do you have some?
Right, I do. One that comes to mind right now is called The Last Manager by John Miller. It is a very exhaustive biography of Earl Weaver.
Mm,
And one of the things that it dispels, that partly dispels, and I plan to do something, I've linked up with John, he's in Pittsburgh, that Dave was known for saying he had some friction with Weaver, and he was known for saying the only thing Earl Weaver knows about pitching is that he can't hit it, referring to Earl Weaver's minor league days in the
yeah.
early 50s when he was growing up in St. Louis. Miller partly dispels that.
Okay.
He says that actually, Earl Weaver was not a bad hitter when he
Mm,
was in the minor leagues. He never really got to the majors, but he could hit better than perhaps gives him
yeah.
credit. And then I'm trying, let's see, here's a book that I'm reading right now. Let's see, it's on my Kindle
Yeah.
too.
That's the
Um,
best place to get books.
a well-paid, oops, a well-paid slave. Let's see, where's the cover? Let me get to the cover again. Come on. Um, Book by Brad Snyder. The subtitle is Curt Flood's Fight for Free
Oh,
Agency in Professional Sports.
yeah.
And then I've got a sample of another book that I'll probably pick up. Let's see, where is it at? Oh, come on. Too many things on here. Um, it's um, Don Drysdale, Up and In.
Oh, yeah.
And that is a significant book because Dave closed out the 1966 World Series when the upstart Orioles beat the Dodgers by beating Don Drysdale. I don't know. I don't think he ever faced Sandy Koufax,
Okay.
but he did face Don Drysdale and beat him. And if I may, I'm adding a kudu that we are hopeful, some of us, both here and in Baltimore and elsewhere, are hopeful of getting Dave into the Hall of Fame in
Yeah.
Cooperstown. The rule of thumb is that as a pitcher, you have to win 200 games,
Yeah.
except, I like to say, except if you're God, if you're Sandy Koufax,
Yeah,
he had
right.
the golden arm.
That's a different
Um,
situation.
Dave won 184 games, um, but his legacy will go beyond just the
Yeah.
sheer number of games he won. He had four 20-win games, four 20-win seasons in a row. He hit the only
Yeah.
Grand Slam home run in World Series history. He was part of the what people consider the greatest pitching rotation in modern baseball history, 1971. He and Jim Palmer,
Oh,
Mike White, and Pat Dobson all were 20-game winners. That's the first time it had happened since the 1920 White Sox.
is he in the Baltimore Hall of Fame or Ring of
Yes,
Honor?
he was the third person
Okay.
inducted
Okay.
into, I think, behind Brooks
Yeah.
and Frank Robinson.
Okay,
Yeah,
that makes
he
sense.
was number three
Yeah.
in the
High
Hall
up.
of Fame. Yeah, and of course, um, Dave did get a sprinkling of Hall of Fame votes in the
Yeah.
early '80s, but never enough to get on the ballot. So now his only hope, I guess they call it the era committee
Yeah.
now, is the old timers.
Right.
So several of us are looking into what strings we
Yeah.
pull to get him
Well,
back
I'm
into
only 4.5
consideration.
hours away from Cooperstown, and I can take a drive and just like with a sign and say Dave McNally, Hall of Fame now or whatever.
Well, I've never been there. If you get
Oh,
there,
you gotta
Nicole,
go.
look for the two mementos of his career there. In 1970, when he hit that Grand Slam home run, he was using a bat he borrowed from a teammate, Kurt Motton, and the ball that he hit into the left field bleachers, they're both enshrined at
Okay.
Cooperstown.
I'm gonna find it. I only been once. I took myself on a birthday trip, and it's honestly, it's a beautiful. I went in the fall, so it wasn't crowded, and it was rainy, but it was like just nice. There's a really good art museum up there too. So like
Mhm.
between the Baseball Hall of Fame and then and then there's a movie that you watch at the beginning, and of course they talk about the '04 World Series, and then I'm crying, and I am, oh, David Ortiz's talking about the World Series. Oh my God, yeah. So
White
there's
Sox
moments.
fans, like Cubs fans, have had a lot to cry about over the
Exactly.
years.
And actually one of my favorite parts of it was I you can get a bat engraved. And I
Mhm.
don't play baseball. I mean, look at me. I don't do sports, but I got a bat with my book title on it just because it was my first book. I didn't have a
Oh,
second book
really?
yet. So I was
Cool.
like, I want a bat that has, so now I have to go back because now I'm going to have 3 books out. So I'm going to have to get more bats. But as a single woman living alone, it's never a problem to have too many bats, I think, because
No.
just in case.
Yeah, that's true.
You never know. I do want to tell you there's a one of the podcasts I did is with a man named Zach Ford. He's based out of San Francisco area, and his first book was all about stories of baseball players getting called up, basically their first game, their how they heard or whatever. And his next one's coming out relatively soon, and it's about what happens after. So when they left, some people had burned hot and bright quick, and then some went. I think there was an insurance agent. He went back to do insurance. So Dave's story probably fascinate him. I wonder if he has that in there about the car dealership because that seems like a big story. So
Well, later on you'll read a story, and I know we're running out of
yeah,
time, about another phenom. Billings was a heck of a was and still is a very good
yeah,
baseball town for its size. A guy named Les Rohr, Rohr. He was the son of a man who had been stationed over in Great Britain during World War II. Met an English woman, and they got married, and he ended up in high school here. I knew of him more as a basketball player at my high school. He was about
okay,
2 or 3 years older than me. He broke in with the Mets, and I think like his first game was a shutout. Let's see, I get him mixed up now, but somewhere along the line he beat Don Drysdale, and then his arm went south on him. So by 1969, when the Mets played the Orioles in the World Series,
mm,
he was there, but he was sitting on the bench. He
yeah,
didn't get to play, and nothing ever really happened. I mean, he bombed out of the big leagues and died year or two ago here in
Oh,
Billings.
okay. That's good to
And a lot of people said that he was better than McNally.
know. Oh, okay. Fighting words.
He had a
Um,
smoking fastball. Dave had an adequate fastball.
okay.
That wasn't
But
his.
it worked. Whatever he
It
had
worked.
works.
Yeah,
All you
well,
need.
a teammate of his who I was talking to at the book launch a couple of weeks ago said about who played with him in Legion Ball said what made Dave's fastball effective was it, quote, jumped
Oh,
right at the end. But he
love
was
that.
more of a curveball and slider kind of guy than a pure, he wasn't a Nolan Ryan or a Jim Palmer.
Yeah.
He relied on control most of the time. Once in a while, he had control
That's
problems.
perfect ending and a good intro to your book because I think we're going to get cut off at any second. Uh, I'm so impressed that I knew exactly when it was going to cut off and that he had the perfect like tag for the kicker. So good on me because I hate that Zoom shows less than a minute. Well, tell me how many seconds down less to a minute because I need to know so that I can cut people off because I'm so fascinated by people's stories. I don't want to ever cut them off, but I also don't want to pay for Zoom. So you got to do what you got to do. Maybe if I sell lots of books in the next year, I'll upgrade and maybe we'll do longer podcasts. But I do like the fact that our podcasts are under an hour so that, for those that commute, it's still digestible. For those that just want to, take an hour out of their day and just listen to me yammer about how much I love books and etc. That also is fine too. Am I recording? Yes, I am. Okay. Whew. I'm doing it in a different way. So definitely check out Dennis's books. He also has a book about Charles Lindbergh in Montana and also about the Battle of Midway for those history buffs. So definitely check those out. But also, if you're a baseball person, I think the story of Dave McNally is kind of interesting, especially with the way baseball is run today. Um, it'll be kind of nice to see how that came about because it was such a novel idea in 1975. Like, can you believe it? And to where we are today. So that's about that. And then book wise with me, I have like 3 copies, 4 or 5 copies of Murder at First Pitch. If you want to still have signed copies for the holidays, I am I have a lot of concession stand crimes too. So if you don't think you need to read the first one, that's fine because you can just read the second one. And I have them on my website, so you can buy them on my website because they are currently not on any of the platforms yet because my old publisher took them down and I'm waiting for the new publisher to pick them up, but they're kind of in the weeds right now too. So I don't know how soon that's going to be. Book 3 is still scheduled for September of 2026. It's done. If you want any, I might start in the new year some quick teasers so you can get prepared for it. It's tentatively Foul Play at the Park. So we'll see how that goes. Book 4, I'm still a third of the way through, 20,000 words. And as I said previously, they go to Vermont for part of the trip. And there's a very, I don't know if it's because I've been watching a lot of Celtics games, but there's a very extended riff on the town. And if you're going, but Nicole, they didn't rob the Celtics. They didn't rob TD Garden. They robbed Fenway. If you know Joe Mazzulla, our Celtics coach, you'll know why I'm talking about the town in the book because he tends to be a little obsessed with the town. And I'm obsessed with Joe Mazzulla. He's weird, but like in the best way possible. And there's some shenanigans happening. I don't know if there's a mouse, but Madeline is losing it. So I'm just going to let her do her thing. Um, Terrified. Books have fallen, so she's very nervous about walking over the books. But books I'm reading right now, I just picked up a ton at the library because why not? I returned Taurus Season by Bryn Weaver, and I ended up not reading it because the trigger warnings scared me because it's serial killer love stuff. And the trigger warnings were very descriptive and very horrifying. So I did not read that one. I'm reading, it's all the way over there. It's The Art of the Lie. Oh, here it is. The Art of the Lie by Laura Shepherd Robinson. And it's kind of in the 1700s when a London woman creates ice cream for her confectioner store, but there's a mystery about her husband, which you don't, it's not really a mystery because in like the first half of the book or the first third of the book, you learn what happened to him and how it affects going forward. So it's told between her perspective and a con man's perspective and how it intertwines. So I started it today and I'm already like 100 pages in because like that sounds really good. Um, what are the other books I got? I'm also reading. I just finished Realm Fate Breaker by Victoria Aveyard. It's her third um, in the Blade Breaker series. Very good. She's always great. She wrote the Red Queen series. It's a young adult um, kind of well, not kind of, it is fantasy. So I just finished that, and I'm also reading The Mist-Torn Witches, who I'm not sure the author is, but it's like it's a fantasy set like witches, castles, because why not? I also have a bunch of sci-fi ones that I'm getting into, and on the Kindle, I'm reading a ton. I'm reading Dave McNally, Dennis's book, couple of historicals, but I'll talk about those more as I get through them. So, other than that, that's all that's going on. So, the next couple of weeks, I have two more interviews scheduled this year, one with the return of Dale Phillips and one with the return of good buddy Olivia Black, whose second book in her, I don't even know what it's called, but I mean, I know the